to Being Right, the Help Self podcast. We don't live in the world as it is. We live in the world as we perceive it. So let's slow down, hold the question, and allow clarity to arrive.
This is the Being Right podcast, and we like to talk about cultural events, religion, science, anything that people can identify with as having the right or the certain viewpoint of the world. And so this podcast is just here to challenge that. And Dustin, you're from my hometown, and we have mutual friends. We went to the same high school, and I haven't talked to you in person or in any type of direct way in, I don't know, 20 or 30 years, maybe. I think you said you're in our neighborhood, and one of our mutual friends, scuttered under our garage, and that was the closest we'd gotten to hanging out. But I'm glad that you're here. I know that you have talked to me about being sober, and that's something that I'll let you explain. We come from a area of the world that is drinking is next to breathing, and it doesn't matter the age, the class, the religious status. Everybody drinks something and drinks it frequently. So I'm interested to hear your kind of take on that. But if you can fill me in and fill anybody else who's going to be watching this or listening, kind of how this whole life of yours has been going. Just start wherever you want. And I'm going to kind of let you tell what's important to you.
Sure. Thanks. Again, grateful, happy to be here. As John said, my name is Dustin, and we grew up in the same town and went to the same school. And we went to a real big school, so we were probably had mutual friends, but kind of ran in different circles a bit. But we crossed paths, plenty of times. And as you said, it was. It was. I'm grateful for where I grew up, but as far as like the sobriety thing that you touched on, it's certainly from the get-go, like from something from an 80s movie montage, like drinking was romanticized with us because for anybody not from our hometown that might hear this, like the first place we ever went out to drink was this place called The Tracks, which is basically these railroad tracks that were just outside of town, and for the only safe place for 15, 16-year-old kids to go and be drunk and loud. And it's like I said, grateful to have grown up where I did, and that I think the older you get, you're able to, they say hindsight's 20/20, right? But like the older you get, you start to like piece together what for a long time may be seen as these frustrating or saddening or rage moments or unnecessary moments, and then you look back, you're like, oh wow, what a necessary step of my journey. And I think growing up, how I did, where I did, is all very, very necessary. I back then discovered I was an actor. Theater was my thing. That was the first, like, from my own experience of talking to other people, I think that high school and the beginnings of high school is when we first start to flirt with identity, I guess, and like become aware of it, and like, who am I? How do I define myself? How do other people define me? And of course, pardon me. Of course, the people that you love and care about the most, you allow how they see you and how they think of you to influence it the most, right? And I was something else we hold in common. I was like a lifelong baseball player, but one interesting thing that happened around the time of like from 7 to like 12, I was always one of the best players. And then come to find out, this is a real common thing, but then everybody goes through puberty, and then a bunch of people like this guy, John, go the other way and become much, much better because you were very, very good. And then there's people like me who just get left behind. And I just got left behind, but it was just like, oh, I was always a baseball player, so I'm supposed to play baseball. truth be told, I played a few years longer than I really wanted to because I thought my grandfather, my dad, that was part of my identity, right? And the first I mean, since you said to jump in anywhere, the first kind of a profound thing that happened with that was I had I had a teacher, because you got to take elective classes when I was at Lee Junior High, and I took a speech class, and so I was just going to get this elective out of the way, and he asked me like probably 15 times to audition for the play. I'm like, no, 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 I'm not an actor. This is fun, but I'm a baseball player, and I'm a baseball player. I'm a baseball player, and
Like Happy
this
Gil,
guy,
is it Happy Gilmore that's always saying I'm a hockey player even though he's playing golf all the time?
yes, yeah, heck yeah. And and your words live, and they're powerful, and they can boost you up, and they can certainly hold you back. And I now know that I was saying that in that way because that's what I wanted to be true, even though my heart wasn't in it, and it's not wasn't my purpose or direction. And this guy, talk about an impactful teacher. He showed up at my house. He showed up at my house. He looked up my address in the student directory. And he said, "Hey, I could be stepping over a line here. I just want to talk to you for a minute." And he said, "I just think you're an actor, and I don't think you realize it yet. And just come audition." He said, "Make up your mind after that. Just come audition." Something about the way he said it, I just believed him, and I showed up. And he gave me a part, and he said, "It's your life. You do what you want." But he said, "I want you to accept this with all that I am." I was like, "Who is this?" And they're like, fast forward, I probably came home from the third rehearsal of that play and told my mom I wanted to act for the rest of my life. It was that fast. It was that fast. I know people's like purpose like that doesn't grab them so quickly, and there's people that go all the way through high school and even college and get out and go like, what the hell am I supposed to do? It's shit, and into the 30s. So I'm very lucky that got to me, so quickly. But
When
for
you
the
say he wanted you to audition for a play, I know now. So you might have said it. I moved back to my hometown. Our hometown is San Angelo, Texas. It's in the west part of Texas, um, west of Austin, west of Dallas, but not quite Abilene or El Paso. So it's kind of nestled into the desert. Now we have acting, kids, Broadway production companies, and all the way up through college. At that time, were you trying out for like a middle school? Was it? I would assume there was nothing private as far as.
Yeah, that's been very that gives me all kinds of bubbly feelings. It's very exciting to see what happened to the theater community in San Angelo. But back when I was there, it was school or it was Angelo Civic Theater, end of options.
And
Um,
that was Angelo Civic Theater. They had kids plays as well, though.
they did, and I got, pardon me, I got involved in those very quickly afterwards, like a couple of years later after this first play, and I did a number of things over there as well. But this was, yeah, this was for the middle school, like the one act play.
Got it.
Well, middle school now, junior high in our days. I think they call it middle school now. But um, yeah, so it went really good. It's called Great Smokies. It was a hillbilly comedy. I and I just it, of course there's nothing like making people laugh and having a room that feels like it's in the palm of your hand. Sometimes in an ego way, I'll admit that, but sometimes it's just I'm helping. As the more time goes on, like making people laugh feels like helping because life is hard, and um, but also like the collaboration of theater, like it's a really wild thing to do because you meet up with folks like often later on in life strangers, and then you just like dive into the depths of like I'm going to try this thing that's just no doubt going to be wrong and going to be embarrassing in front of all these people I don't know. And you do that over and over and over, and all of a sudden these discoveries happen, and you just make and create this thing, and you did it all together, and that's in a couple of sentences, the magic of theater, and why I love it so much. And so all of that grabbed me like super fast, but I was also still playing baseball badly.
It also
Um,
seemed like from an outsider looking in and having family members that were big into theater, it seemed like it kind of broke down the clique class system for middle school or high school. Like anybody could do it. You could be in band and theater or a jock in theater or whatever. It seemed to have its own world that I don't know. I mean, looking back on it now, my question would be, does theater not only allow you to play a part, but also allow you to be more yourself in a time that is everybody seems to be following neat boxes?
Absolutely, because one of my favorite expressions from a teacher I had way later on in New York, is she would always say the character is stuck with you. And what she means by that, yes, you're going to create this walk and this voice and maybe this posture and this character container we call it. But you know what? Like if you got a headache, character has the headache. Like if you got a stomach issue you're going on, like you can't act your way out of like feeling that. So it just becomes part of. So like I say that to say you have to become like really, really comfortable with like just the real you without a face, because that's the base for every character you play. I mean, to kind of answer your question, and that's like the unexpected, like therapeutic part of theater is that you're discovering like who is base level Dustin, and I need to. I know that this and this is going on, but I need to set that aside. I need to set this aside and just be base level Dustin, and I'm just going to add some things onto it to make this character. Otherwise, it's not going to be true. It's not going to be authentic, and people aren't going to like it, and I'm not going to feel fulfilled doing it. So it's very much what you said. Um, uh, and so going back to that first show, when I got, I told you what I said, so long after the third rehearsal. After the first show, I um I don't always have this forthrightness and ambition like as an adult, but I looked up and asked around and asked and got the contact information for the Central Theater director. And I just wanted to call and introduce myself and tell you I plan on working real hard and being in every show that you're offering next year. Cocky little shit. Um,
Yeah.
and but I was just like felt like this is like what I'm supposed to do. Um, now, if I can go on the briefest of tangents, like my father at this point had been back in San Angelo for 3 years. He moved away for work when I was 4, and he was gone till I was 12. And him coming back, I mean, talk about sense memory, one of the best days of my life because he didn't just go away like we talked twice a week. He was in town once a month. So for somebody who their father was absent for, a long time, we had a tight relationship regardless of distance. So when he moved back, it was like a thing. And there comes the like, because the way he used to, look at me when I got the big hit in the baseball game. I mean, what son doesn't like just that's your fuel, right? And so he thought it was so cool when I did the play, right? But that's kind of where that ended. He thought it was so cool. And then all of a sudden I start having these talks about like, I want to keep doing this. And I could feel the apprehension. I could feel the resistance.
What was
And
the resistance from?
um, I think I now know as a parent, you want, and my daughter's only about to turn 5, so we're not even close to that, but you want them to make choices that you believe are going to have some sort of future that helps them take care of themselves. I know now that's where his head was, which baseball wasn't it either. I wasn't even that good. So, but like the way I talked about it with such passion And I already started like researching colleges as a sophomore. I was looking at colleges based on their theater program and talking about it. And he said, you can't be a theater major. There's no future in that, and there's no future in that. And that started from the end of ninth grade, all the way through sophomore year. And then I was in every show my sophomore year when we went to high school. And um, by the end of that, like, and I, I mean, gosh, I just knew it was like my life, my calling, and we increasingly got in more and more arguments about that. Um,
Did he have a specific thing he wanted you to be or become in life, or is it just, you know, go to
no,
college,
and that,
get a job, and pay your bills, so don't screw that path up?
I think it was more that, but all I experienced now, in the moment, was like, you don't support this dream and goal and this thing that I have my whole heart in at the moment. That's all. A 16-year-old Dustin would not see past that. I now know that all this was coming from a good place and a place of love and good intention, um, he just said you're real smart. Because I always, aced grades. We went to a big school, and I was, towards the top, and so he was more like, you're limitless in your options. So you're going to pick this thing that's like you're basically winning a lottery ticket to have a future in. So I get it. I mean, I understand that apprehension, but also, um, it's all about me like finishing things. And then it comes to like that sophomore year at the beginning. Uh, Again, there was still this small part because of him, because my grandfather. I was like, all right, yeah, I'll go ahead and sign up with baseball. And so we were probably there together for the 2 days. And after 2 days, I was real nervous to it. And the coach was the short little round blonde guy. What was his name?
Ted Leps.
Coach Leps. I talked to him after class. Um, and he already knew that, uh, about my cousin Ryan, who was a great pitcher for them back in the day, years before. And so like he compared me to him, and I just told him like, listen, I played baseball since I was 7. I love it a lot. Um, but there's a thing, and this is the first time I believe I was ever this level of transparent. I was like, there's something that I became aware of in these last 2 days, is that I have this thing right now where I love baseball and I love theater. And he smirked and so affirming and just kind of laughed. I was like, I just had a realization today that I'm not willing to work as hard to be better at baseball, not even close to how hard I'm willing to work in theater. And I think I need to listen to that and just choose to devote my time to theater and respect my time and yours, which for a 16-year-old, I thought was a very fucking, pardon my language, very respectful way
That's
to
fine.
present that. He's like, something like, yeah, well, whatever, get out of here. And then,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
I left.
First off, that is a very mature thing for a 16-year-old. But also, my brother made the same type of. It was either at the end of his sophomore year or the beginning of his junior year, but he had played baseball and decided to go into theater. And um, my dad had trained us to be athletes because I think he didn't get that opportunity as a kid growing up. So he wanted to give us that opportunity. But he wasn't, he was equally shocked when my brother said, I'm going to set baseball aside and do theater. And I remember about the same time there was a commercial that came out where a guy's playing college basketball and he's about to take the final shot and the lights go down and it becomes like a performance hall where there's a spotlight and music, and then he says, I just want to dance. And he starts kind of dancing across the court and his dad is in the audience just super disappointed. And I don't understand looking back now. I mean, I know I feel like I know people's kids do sports and do theater or do sports and do performance choir. I don't understand um, that mentality of, oh, okay, you're going to go do theater. Like, like it's something not as high art as baseball would be in a small town. Um, I never understood it. You know,
I all I can
you were the mature one in the room. I'm assuming, and I wished adults would have been more open to kids doing multiple things, students doing multiple things. Yeah.
it's the only two things I can point at as a maybe that contributes most is generational and regional. I mean, where we grew up, like it's football is certainly a religion. And I think gender roles are very outdated and behind where we grew up and continue to be, in my opinion.
And
That's
is that the thing? You know, it's not manly enough. Is
Yeah,
it
I
for
really
them?
do believe that. I really, because my father was a old school conservative West Texas dad, and and I believe that contributed to it. And I think it was a mix of that and you know which I would call, not my term, it's psychology term, but what I would refer to as a blind spot, like and we only allow certain people in our lives to point out and correct our blind spots, and usually don't want it to be your children. I hope that I'm saying that out loud when Isabel grows up, that I'm not that parent, that I can allow her to teach me. Because as I told you the other day, like she does it now. She teaches me a lot about mindfulness and having goldfish memory about things that don't matter because that's kids. But I just think that my dad had that very common blind spot for that age group of father from where we grew up is the simplest way. And there may or may not be, to go deeper than it being manly, is you know they think of theaters where there's a lot of homosexuals, and is that going to
Catch.
it feels silly to say this out loud because I know this is not how it works, but it's like, is that going to make my son homosexual?
Yeah, is it
But
going to rub off?
but that's
Absolutely.
real. There's still people
Yeah.
that think that don't agree that somebody's born that way. And um so which is a good segue into what happened, the next year, because that sophomore year, like I was in everything and I was like, oh yeah, this is my thing, this is my identity, I am an actor. And all of a sudden it just became, this is the heart and core of Dustin. And then somebody said, hey, at the Angelo Civic Theater they do this summer workshop, which was bliss. Like, we did theater, we rehearsed a show for 12 hours a day and then like put it up 2 weeks later. It was the best 2 weeks of the summer. And uh and so I did that, and I was heavy looking into the colleges, and we got a new teacher. Her name is Victoria Klimchak at the time. She now is Victoria Scheffler. She is the most impactful, most important teacher I ever had in my life. We were her first teaching assignment. She was like 26 at the time, and she was just ambitious. She didn't care that she was in West Texas. She just came in. We always started with a children's show. The first children's show we did was a blast, and you could tell that she was an amazing director. And she announced the school musical, which safe musicals were usually picked at that school, over the years. She decided she wanted to pick a chorus line, which is incredibly hard because it's very dance centric show. Like, so you really, that's the type of show that would, if in high school, it's going to be like a magnet school that they do something like that at, not a regular high school, certainly not West Texas. So we had to do all these dance workshops before to make sure we could even, like, everybody could learn well enough to even do the show. And then I read the script, and then I did a big no-no. There's actually a 80s movie. I watched the movie, and there was a part in the so it's about a group of dancers auditioning to be on a chorus line of a show. That's it. But then they of course share all the the heartbreaks and the woes of chasing the artistic dream, which singers, dancers, actors, they all can identify with it. Anybody really. But so in the middle of it, like they go on a break, and like the director is in the audience. That's how you stage it, and one of the dancers is like hanging behind, and like the director says, "Hey, Paul, can I talk to you a minute?" And because he's been real shy and he won't talk, and he just wants to open him up a little bit, and he just has this 10-minute heartbreaking monologue about how he grew up, he was gay, and he used to do drag shows, and he had to hide it from his parents, and his father never knew who he really was, and he was going to do this one last show and then move on to New York and chase his dreams, and his parents snuck in to see the show, but they didn't know he was going to be in drag, and his father was real disappointed. And the last part of the monologue is like he looked at the director who I was going to New York with, and he said, "Take care of my son. That was the first time he ever called me that." Oh, just gut wrenching monologue. And my immediate thought was like, I have to have that part. I have to have that part. And I was like, I have not been challenged yet. And this is what I need. And I went to my director and I said, "Hey, we don't have a lot of Hispanic people in our department. Does this person have to be Hispanic or Puerto Rican?" And she's like, "No. Are you interested in that part?" And I was like, "Very much. And I promise I'll work my ass off and just let me audition." And then I auditioned. I got it, and I was over the moon about it. And two big things happened because of this show. First, you know, and we can come back to this in a little bit. I'm going to glaze over right now, but I was at the time the president of my youth group at the First Baptist Church of San Angelo. My youth minister pulled me aside, as he often did after, and he said, "Hey, I heard about the part you got in the school musical." I said, "Oh, thank you." And then his voice got quiet. He's like, "Oh, it's not congratulating you. As a Christian, you shouldn't accept that part." And you want to talk
So
about
he
growing.
knows he knew of this play and the part now, or is he just
Well, yeah,
speaking in general?
yeah, we had some intersection between that youth group and some theater kids, and so they all told him about the part I got. There was other
Gotcha.
kids from our youth group in the show,
Mhm.
but like I lobbied for and got a gay role,
Sure. Be
and
in the play, just don't be gay in the play.
yeah, exactly.
Got it.
And it was just growing up years inside of one moment, and a big veil lifted. And the only times, I've been back to church since that day were for weddings and funerals. But again, we can go back to that in a little bit if you want to. But uh, so that happened, and then of course told my dad about it, and uh, that was a disappointing conversation. He said, "Tell me more about it." And I told him, and he said, "Well, I'm not gonna come watch my son be a fag on stage." And it's fucking heart wrenching, man. And I was calm in the moment, and I was more probably bitter. That like this is the most excited I've been to do a thing ever in my life, right? And so I abandoned for the next 3 months my schoolwork, my friends, my little brother, everything. And I just dove into that part. And of course, you make a play about you because as you asked about earlier, you can't abandon yourself in a character. And I was like, here's a monologue about a guy being upset that his father doesn't know who he really is. I was like, this is what an opportunity. It's like, this is the first time this is mirroring my life. He doesn't realize that I'm an actor and I have to, show him. But up until, the show was opening, I did not believe that he was coming. Now we did that show for 2 weeks. We also did it at the Texas State Thespian Conference, which we won a bunch of awards for, and I got an award for. But out of all of those, probably 15 performances, the best performance we had was opening night in high school, and the best time I ever did that monologue was that night. It was the only night it like stopped the show, and like got a standing ovation in the middle of the show because the monologue's in the middle of the show. And one of the any theater person will tell you it's obviously an ego thing, but one of the best parts about doing theater is like going out to the lobby after the show's over because all your like friends, especially in high school, it's like your friends they don't know that that's your thing, and this is maybe the first time they've ever seen you do something like that. And and I went out and saw a couple people, but and uh, I saw my father, and this was the first time in my life that I'd ever seen my father cry. And I was old enough and close enough with him that I knew what was happening. And I ran to him and we just had like a hug of a lifetime. And he just grabbed my face like I was a little kid. And he said, "You promised me you will be an actor for the rest of your life." And that's why that's like the most important show I ever did. And I did almost 100. And uh, if that wasn't enough, talk about a sign from God or the universe or whatever. Like he immediately has transformed our relationship where it's like, hey, this is my son's thing. So I want to talk about it all the time because we went to movies all the time and we'd talk about actors. And I remember one day I asked him, I was like, hey, I know, like, you never did it, and you said you wouldn't, you don't think you could, but if you ever did play a part, like, what would you want to be? He thought about it, and he's like, I think I'd want to be Big Daddy in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. A week later, the one act gets announced, and it was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and I got cast as Big Daddy.
Wow.
And so I consulted him throughout that with how he would play the role and moments and all that, and worked on it at home. And it's just those two things happening back to back was like un it was unbelievable, like revelation of like, well, the character of my father, obviously, but like the power of art. Like,
Yeah.
because they say it's a mirror to to people, to humans, to society, and it's one of those things. It changed somebody fundamentally to the core, and I'll give some credit to art and to the character of my father to allow that. But that was the most like because your show is about being you know being right about things, and you know uh you don't get that without realizations about being wrong about things. And I certainly in the beginning of that I'm like, well, this is how he is and that will never change. And that's an unfair thing to do to people, to you know to shortchange them and be like, oh well, they're never gonna change, because that's just the way they are, that's the thing that they believe, and they're we hang on to our beliefs, and we're not fluid with them. And well, you don't know that because I mean, you can. One of my favorite, I don't even remember where I heard this from, like just philosophical things, is like, there's so your spouse, your mother, your father, your brother, your best friend. If you really, really think about it, you never really actually really know anybody. That's a hurtful thing to hear when you first hear it. And it probably took me years to hear that, but like, I now know what that means, because like, I mean, I think I know what my wife's thinking and feeling it most times, but there are times that I don't have a clue. And if I acknowledge that, then I have to say that, well, you know what? I don't know the depths of her. And in that thing, I obviously didn't know the depths of my father. I
Yeah.
didn't know how much he loved me to allow that to happen. And that's why I mean, if you ask me, this would be a silly thing to do, but if you ask me to rank the five most significant moments of my life, that's definitely on there, because like I said earlier, we work things backwards, right? Like this and this had to happen. Um, and the fact that I made with my whole heart that promise that I would be an actor for the rest of my life ended up having this tremendous influence on so many other things and decisions I would make that I promised. Um,
Yeah.
so
One of the things I take a behavior science perspective towards the work that I do with students and teachers. And a lot of the times when I meet teachers that don't want to work with students because of their behavior, It's they have that view. They have the view that the kid is this way. And before I talk to them about like an intervention or some type of reinforcement program, I always start with the foundation that behavior happens between people, or behavior happens between a person and the world. It's not who the person is. And if you don't have that view, you're not going to really do what's necessary to help the kid, because you're just going to see them as lazy or dumb or mean, and that's who they're going to be. That's who they will be to you, and so there will naturally be a barrier for you from you helping them. And I think that's the same. It can be towards, those teachers to their kids. It could be parents to their own children. Like, my kid is just this way. Or in your case, it's, the way you think of your father. Um, it's certainly the way I think about West Texas people right now. I mean, we live in we were just talking about current events. We live in a weird, strange time. And I feel like this culture here, which wasn't really open to new ways of thinking, uh, strange ways for people to be or act or live, have just even closed. They've closed down even more. Um, and I view them as that way. I don't view them as, hey, let's give these people an experience, or introduce them to a person who could um, help them to be more open or welcoming. But yeah, I think we're all guilty of that.
I'm
Seeing
just
things.
curious, but with your background, because of everything that you just said, which I profoundly agree with, I've always sometimes felt like in all forms that labels are really dangerous, and it's kind of for the reason that you just said. Do you halfway like agree with that or understand why I would say that?
Yeah, in the second book I wrote, I was trying to tackle the question that I had about which words are helpful to us and which words are hurtful. And I tell the story of, I believe it was your cousin Grant, our mutual friend, was the first one to tell me about the brown bottle blues. And I was just feeling shitty on a Sunday, and I thought the world was ending. And he's like, "No, dude, that's from drinking last night. That's that's how you feel the day after." And I never understood it, but once I had that label, ever since, if I had that feeling again, it's like no big deal. So that label is helpful, because it helped me
Yeah.
realize, hey, in this situation, this is an eternal viewpoint I'm going to have of the world now, that it's gray and it's depressing.
It's a
Um,
good point.
However, on the other side of that, you have the, hey, um, this kid has ADHD. Well, how do you know he has ADHD? Because he can't sit still. Well, why can't he sit still? Because he has ADHD. And we haven't gotten anywhere. We're just labeling something to be able to use that label to say that's the reason, but it doesn't explain anything. So in that sense, the label's worthless. And that's what I tell the parents of kids that have, autism or emotional disorders, that I don't care about the label. The label is meaningless to me. I'm looking at the behavior, as far as how you get services, or how it might help you as a parent to use a label to just know that there's something confined to this area, and it gives you a little bit of peace knowing, oh, okay, these characteristics are common. But yes, I think that is one of the most kind of misunderstood ways we think we know the world, is what people have told us it is. That that's just a tree. And so it's nothing magical or mystical anymore. It's just that thing over there that has a name. And so we don't experience the world. I mean, I say this in the silly kind of opening of this podcast. We don't experience the world as it is. We have a lens through which we see it, and a lot of that is made up of labels.
Yeah. No, I like that because yeah, me and my wife talked about that. Sometimes you step outside and you take that deep breath and you're like, oh God, it's a beautiful day outside. I'm like, does it look different than yesterday? Or you just did you wake up different? And that's kind of like what you're getting at here. So I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I agree with you because whenever you were talking about the other side where they help, the thing that popped in my head was saying, well, when somebody says they're hangry, that's a good label because it kind of explains, a thing that happens to all of us. But yeah. Oh,
okay. So please continue.
um, so that that was transformational thing. Complete now. Now he's researching schools with me, and you know, I I make slow decisions usually. I'm the type of person I make um a major purchase from something online. I will read hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating, of reviews before I make decisions. And I did the same thing with college days. I went to 8 college days, and I decided on to show our age on Southwest Texas State, which is now called Texas State, and has now had millions of dollars poured into it, and it is a top 10 ranked theater school. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. We did that.
Yeah.
We gave you all that. No, but I'm real proud of what's happened with that school. But I met all my best friends there. Like I live 8 doors down from one of them right now. She's a big part of the reason we chose, where we live and everything. And I did so much great theater and learned so much. I did a lot of exploration outside of theater. That's when spiritual exploration, substance exploration. Um, I think that because we're going to get into addiction and my sobriety journey here in a little bit, but I think that my drug use in college was actually fun and responsible because I was mostly doing hallucinogens. I did a lot more than the average person that misses with them, and a lot of exploration that way, a lot of concerts, and just getting to know people on deep levels and myself and all that. And I now that I had part of like stepping, if you go to college somewhere else than where you live, is that you get to almost without realizing it, like take off these like fronts or facades or masks that you're forced to wear all the time. Because as I referenced earlier, like that, what my youth minister had said about that role I got when I was a sophomore made me just kind of like, with church and it's not like when you do that, when you break up with church, you don't like break up with like your faith, but like my faith is all like muddied, and I was like, well, I don't know how to hold this now. Um, and uh, I'll just keep it in my back pocket, and then I'll still like put on a whatever for my grandparents and my family and all that, and go along whenever they're talking about your whatever they're saying, because it's all good intentions when like your walk with the Lord and all that stuff that comes up at Thanksgiving and everything. But then I got to college and I started reading a lot, and one of the first classes I took was a speech comm class, and our final was hey, come up with a problem that you see in society, and then present what you think is your solution. It's persuasive speech, 10 minutes. And um, what I came up with was that I thought that too many children were either forced, coerced, strong armed, whatever word you want to use, into the religion or denomination of their parents. And that the obvious solution was for their parents to be brave enough to become informed about as many of them as possible, introduce them to their kids and say, here, pick, or don't pick any of them, whatever you want. Just because basically that was like what I'd wish would happen. The process of like researching and come up with that speech, forgive me, there was a book called The Golden Rule, and I do not know the author off the top of my head, but I know it was called The Golden Rule. That was when it blew my mind because in Christianity, it's do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But every religion's text is the same thing. Like Taoism was like, regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain and your neighbor's loss as your own loss. They were all that idea. And I'm just like, that's when it started spinning. I was like, well, these are all just containers then to try to travel to the same thing. So why is like so much fighting and judgment done in the name of choosing these different containers? And it was just like, so that assignment and doing that speech was like a big, like, okay, well, I don't want a container. I still feel a connection to all of these people, even these strangers, and these trees here and stuff. Maybe that was all the mushrooms, but but and I know that there's like something else because I feel that, and that's the thing that I feel connects us. But like, I don't want to walk into a building with people wearing the best thing that they own, pretending that they didn't just have this knockdown, drag out fight at home before they came, just because I that's what you're supposed to do and it's tradition. And that was a big, big thing for me, even though it was like assignment and like that teacher was like real, professor was really taken with it. And that was finally I got to like put more of some edges on what I would be my spiritual beliefs. Well, edges is a horrible word choice because I think it's so it should your spiritual belief should be very fluid, in my opinion. I say in my opinion because what I have come in my old age to really believe is that if you are a Christian or Jewish or Muslim and your faith brings you genuine peace and happiness and you treat people with kindness and without judgment, I am genuinely happy for you and grateful for you that you have that in your life. And all I ask is that you could just put that happiness and gratitude back to me for like me finding peace and happiness and what my spiritual definition is. Um, and so like, that gets, and that's an interesting thing over the years because people say, well, are you still a Christian? And I'm like, I don't know. What does that mean to you? That annoys people because I'm like, I mean, because to me, like,
The
I don't
question
have,
is, are you still on our team? That's what we want to know.
yes,
Are you still
yes,
on my
yes.
team? Are we on the same side?
Right, right. And it's just because to me, I'm like, I know what it means to you because I grew up with a Baptist preacher grandfather. You mean, do I believe that Jesus Christ, went on the cross and died for my sins? And if I don't, confess that and that I know what you mean. I don't have to accept that definition. I don't have to lean on the Bible. I can lean on the Bible and history to know that there was a man named Jesus from Nazareth. He taught sermons, and from all accounts, he was enlightened to a point that most people never reach. And if you, by my definition of Christianity, want to live your life like him, good on you. I'm trying to also. But that's the part that I'm choosing to do. And I really hope that you don't have a problem with that because we're kind of doing the same thing. I just chose to shape it a little bit different. That's all. And the other part of it is it's a hill that I always die on when I get in deep religious or spiritual conversations with people is I think the biggest mistake that humans ever made is the personification of God. And I understand why it happened because I think it's real hard to like get our brains and our hearts to align to accept this much, much, much bigger, vast concept of a God as like a source, instead of like, what do you mean a source? Like, it's just an easier thing to be like, he does this, he does that. And I just, so when I say, you know, I think of God as the ultimate source of energy and love and, not, and, oh, so you don't think he's a creator? No, I didn't say that. Because if everything is made of love and energy, as I believe, then yeah, I guess you could say that. I'm not going to use that word because I know
Yeah,
you mean it differently than I do. You know what I mean?
yeah. And well, this is something that I've been very interested in lately, especially as a human science person. I have found that science looks more like religion now than I ever thought it did because it became a belief structure about this material world and this is all that there is. And the funny thing is, the culture of religion, at least in the West, has adopted that. So they act like science and religion are against each other, but really, they're all um, like materialists. That this is the only thing. If we can see it, touch it, hold it, move it, that's how we describe the world, and that's how we put something that is unknown or a mystery or real but not literal into a way that we can conceptualize it. So God, which is um, conceived of through metaphor, because God's not able to be conceived with a mental, rational, materialistic mindset. It's a mystery. I mean, it's a beautiful thing about life. It's a mystery. There's a lot of unknowing or not knowing, and we're not okay with that. It's uncomfortable to say I don't. And in fact, I don't get into any religious arguments anymore, contrary to what it may seem based on what I'm trying to say on this podcast. But I I think the error is when somebody says they know, like they know they're going to heaven. Well, that's not knowing. You can believe that, you can want that. You don't know that. You can't know that. You haven't been there yet. We don't know, but we can believe it. So we have to be able
Hmm.
to say, here's our belief, here's what we know, here's matter. We don't know that God is matter, right? We don't know
Hmm.
that I think and I took us way off course. These are just too many
No.
thoughts in my own head. I haven't been able to speak out loud. That I think where religion should be, all of them, and where they all started was a trusting in something we don't know. You know, I always use the example of I don't beat my own heart. I don't circulate my own blood. It happens. I'm grateful it happens. And I'm grateful to the power and the energy that makes it happen, but it's not my doing. So I am trusting in something unknown to give me life and to allow me to enjoy the trees and the sun and my family. But to try to put it in a box that's comfortable is to just make a step that's only for my own security. It's not towards
Yeah.
true knowing.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that I totally feel that because and I'm not above that need for definition, that need for explanation. I've got many aspects of my life that I've it's a grief. I mean, when somebody dies, we're like, somebody explain to me why. Like that's the whole thing, and so I get it. It's kind of just like a deep down ingrained thing in us. But yes, you hit the nail on the head. It's just that need for definition. You may know this, but you reminded me. There's some quote about God is the blanket that we put over the mysterious box of mystery to give it shape or something. Does that sound familiar at all?
I don't know that.
I have to look it up. But speaking of that, the one wanted to share also that um, if you remember, maybe for some of our younger viewers, they used to actually get DVDs with Netflix. And I remember I ordered a documentary about love. I do not remember what it's called because we're talking 20 years ago or something like that. And there was a guy on there that was like um, he was a physicist by trade for a number of years, and he got sick of being in academia and and all that comes with that. And then he just had a friend that like talked him into running off to a Buddhist monastery. And so I'm like, right away, I'm like, okay, let's talk about a guy with a wide ass perspective on life. I'm in. You sold me. And he dropped a quote in that I have dropped on special occasions over the years. And I'll say right now, just I've never been able to find that documentary. I've searched. I feel about I can guarantee about 95% accuracy, but he said, um, isn't it obvious that love and energy are one and the same? So anything we accept that is true of energy, we must accept the same as true of love. They say it is scientific law that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, so we must accept that the same is true of love. So the first time you say I love you to a family member, a best friend, or a stranger on the street, it is not your ego creating something. It is not your humility receiving a gift. It is your being acknowledging something that has always been there and will always be there. And it was just one of those things. I paused it and I burst into tears.
Yeah.
And it's just the way. If there's a quote or a statement that could define my spiritual beliefs, I mean that's it. That's it. Because I mean, I think whether they want to admit it or not, we have all had somebody like do something nice, a stranger in the store do something nice for their elderly, mother, or somebody hold a door open for you, or you're witnessing a kindness, and there's like this exchange of a smile and you know, a locking of eyes, and in that moment, I think if people will just accept that it's really what's happening, you are experiencing a momentary a bit of love that is every bit as powerful as seeing your mother at Christmas for the first time in 6 months because you live elsewhere. And just people are like, I don't love a stranger as much as my mother, and why not? I mean, why not? That's why, you know, I referenced him when we first started talking about doing this, but uh, I can't tell I'm in love with poignant quotes. But along my reading, I came you know, across you know, Ram Dass, and that's just more than anybody. That's my guy. Right over there on my nightstand, I got his book. Be Here Now. It stays there. Um, and so my next tattoo is actually one of his sayings, and it's a real simple one. He just says, "We're all just walking each other home," and that's another one that kind of defines my spiritual beliefs.
Did you
Eh,
listen to that book?
did I listen to the book?
I'm assuming it's written, but the book, Walking Each Other Home, has him.
Oh no, that one I have not.
It's fantastic. Like I have it on audiobook because the lady reads, I believe she reads herself, and he actually talks himself sometimes. It was when he was dying after his stroke,
Hmm.
and she's kind of like revisiting some spiritual teachings and some ways that he dealt with hospice patients that he worked with. And um, man, every single time somebody that I know, I'm the worst at social etiquette. I'm at a funeral. I made a just terrible statement to a cousin who had lost his father, just because I just don't know how to kindly say, "Hey, I'm sorry for your loss," and just walk away. Like I'm always trying to do something. Anyway, so every time I know somebody that has a family member or a friend pass away, I always go back to this audiobook just to slow down and try to be a person that doesn't have to have the right thing to say, but can also be at peace with a situation that's bigger than understanding. And Mirabai Bush, I believe, is the lady, probably killing that. And Ram Dass. Anyway, it's really good when you said walking each other home. Sorry.
I, no,
It's
I've got to because I'm a super fan. Like reading that, there was a documentary that he did right after having the stroke, and that's what really made me fall in love with him because there's something about seeing him on video, and then just his story is you know, is fascinating. You know, not to go off on a tangent, but you know, anybody that you know listens to may not for be familiar, like long time ago, like at a corner, two intersecting corner offices at the Harvard psychology department. You had two professors, him is named Professor Alpert, and his buddy Timothy Leary. And they got this place off a campus and this house, and they started doing a bunch of LSD, and they had students do it and doing all these experiments. And eventually they diverged into like two beliefs. Where Timothy Leary wanted to push what they were doing even further and take more, and Richard Alpert or Ram Dass decided, hey, I think that we can get to this without this, and I want to go explore that. So I'm going to India. Went over to India, went and learned a lot, and he came back and he was Ram Dass, and he got a following and wrote this book. Um, I just anybody that is brave enough to go through an individual transformation like that has my attention, and uh,
Yeah, he
yeah.
said, and I can never figure out where he said this, but he said, I can't. Somebody was asking him about studying. He said, I'm now become the datum, as in I'm not out there doing psychological studies. I will be something for you to watch. I'm the datum for you to watch and see for yourself instead of me out there proving things with my own studies, which is kind of cool from a
I
science
love that.
perspective. I'm the experiment.
I love that because in the face of, yeah, me and my wife talk about this all the time, and like I have a cousin I'm real close to that, um, you know, that, and we're on different sides of the political spectrum, if you want to call it, but like God, we have the great, respectful conversations with each other, and which is them being lost in our time. So I'm so grateful for him. But um, uh, I just Why did I bring that up? What was I going to connect that to?
Uh,
Sorry.
I you were saying you had the quote on your you read the quote from the Love documentary, and then you said you like quotes, and you read the quote from Ron Dawson, and I took us off
Yeah.
track.
Um, no, yeah, yeah, that's yeah, anyway, it's just people that allow oh yeah, power, how power corrupts. Yeah. Because we always talk about like how the thing that, the both political sides have in common once they rise to power, it's the most corrupting drug of all time and it's irresistible. And I will admit if I was handed the power of not even a president, of like just like a senator or whatever, I'm not going to say in this container. Like I'm sorry, I have no illusions about that, but I think even like becoming like a spiritual guru like that, like would feed you like with power. And then of course we see these documentaries about cults and like they go the other way. And that's what I love about him so much is that he not only didn't let that happen, but he went the other way into like what you're saying, into more curious and more humble. Like in that documentary, there's a young girl that comes to visit him after his stroke, and she is having trouble because she lost her ex-fiance passed away, and now she's discovered she's had a new relationship, and it's like a year later, year and a half later, and she just can't let go of the guilt of being in a new loving relationship. And then she had this dream that her ex, now passed on fiance, said, "It's okay, love him with all your heart because I'll be a part of that love." And that was just the end of the dream. And like Ram Dass burst into tears and he said, "You've taught me such a powerful lesson today. And thank you so much." And like the whole documentary before that is just building him up as like this wise guy. And just to see like, yeah, he's wise, but oh, look at him just learning. And it's like, it was a real profound like thing to like never stop. Like, I mean, knowledge base or whatever, it's never, that's a moving target you're never going to get to. But, um, sorry, we could do a whole episode about Ram Dass, like
Excellent.
my
I love it. Yeah. So speaking of
admiration for
learning,
him.
let's get back
Yeah.
to your learning story.
Oh yeah. So yeah, so that was like a profound thing that happened in college. And then I've referenced ego a few times, and I have this whole belief that we're in a never-ending battle with ego our whole lives, and it's you lose it every single day when you're young, and you slowly get better at it, and maybe you can win sometimes before you leave this earth. And my ego, something I lost at was I had learned all I could learn about acting from this school, and it was time to move on. I dropped out of school with the plan to because I had a good job that I'd been just promoted to a manager to, as and it was a telemarketing office fundraising, and I was just real good at it, and I was like, okay, um, it was great money for year 2000, and I was like, I'm going to save money, and I'm going to move to New York. I've already got friends moving to New York, and I'm going to go do this thing. This is the plan. That was always the plan, to move to New York. Matter of fact, um, all of that was born. I'm going to go back in time for just a split second, because there's a small part of me that thinks that there is a chance that you were on this trip. I could be mistaken. When I was 14, we went on a trip to New York and Washington, D.C. No. Okay. Because it was kids from Lee and Glenn. But I had I went on that trip, and I remember having, after we went in the middle of like Times Square and like where they did the late show, and I just remember having this. Everybody was like like this, and I was just real calm. I'm like, I'm gonna live here one day. And I hadn't even acted yet. I just felt like I want to live here one day. And
Oh,
then
this is before your speech
yeah,
teacher sought you out.
yeah, that happened probably the next school year. This happened the
Okay,
next
so
school year. So we
it
went.
wasn't you wanted to live in New York to be an actor. It was just you
No,
wanted
I just
to
like
be.
I wanted to to be there. I'm like, oh, this is not San Angelo, um, and so so that I had always held on to that, and then the acting thing, like, oh, well, I want to do theater. Never had a desire to do TV, film stuff. I always wanted to do theater, and so like the the specific dream of moving to New York to pursue my acting dream started the moment I started acting, because the New York thing was already there, and it just carried through. And so I was like, all right, here's my opportunity. I've got this good job. I'm good. I'm not going to be a theater teacher. I don't need to finish this degree. So I'm going to go ahead and drop out, save this money, and move. All right. So now you take away the structure of school. Now I just have work and now I just make money. And all my friends that I did, fun stuff, hallucinogens and all that kind of stuff with moved on. Okay. What else is left? Well, I like to drink. And unfortunately, somewhere around that time, cocaine came in my life. And those two were just inseparable married partners in my brain right away. Didn't have one without the other. And that was the beginning of a long period of being what is called, talk about a label, but an accurate one, a high functioning addict. I never missed work, never, I was responsible, but, blackout drunk, doing coke like all the time. And that started from like
Is it like every day, or is it like on the weekends when you
four,
say you're an
I,
addict?
mm,
Let us.
I would say not necessarily every day. And I have those conversations because I've been sober so long. And when people try to say, like I'm not addicted or I'm not an alcoholic because I
Yeah,
don't drink every day. I'm like, no, no, no.
that's what I was trying to get to is
Uh,
when I think of an addiction, I'm not a psychologist, but the DSM or whatever talks about it disordering your life, like an
mhm.
addiction disorder. So my first thought isn't that you have to do it every day, but my second question would be, how is it disordering your life, or why do you make that distinction?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I would say like it's not how frequently you do it, but what happens when you do it, and to more to your point, to disorder. And um, so it moved in phases. In the beginning, it was probably 4 or 5. I think most commonly 4 or 5 nights a week, and then just taking a couple of nights off. But as far as disordering, it um, I rationalization of so many rationalizations, but like, I mean, I just told you what the plan was, why I dropped out of school. Like, oh, I'll save X amount out of next paycheck so I can get this 8 ball tonight because I want to share with my friends or whatever. Or I want to pay everybody's bar tab. Oh, see,
And
one
was
of the
that
things I,
before? So what was one of the reasons for dropping out because you'd already gone down this path?
no, no, it didn't happen till after. Didn't
Okay.
happen. When I dropped out of school, I felt I had a very clear plan that I was going to stick to. Like, hey, I'm going to put in 60 hours a week at this job. I will be able to save X amount over this time. And I think next year, with my group of friends that's going to be graduating next year, I'll find one of them to move with. And and it just didn't take long before, like whatever. I mean, I'm transparent, but like, the year is 2001, right? I was making like 55,000 in 2001. That was a considerable amount of money to like live in San Marcos,
That's a good
Texas.
amount of money.
And I lived paycheck to paycheck because they say the good the good things or the good things and bad things about you often come from the same part of your personality or brain. I would consider myself a generous person. I like taking care of people. Oh my God, I paid for some humongous bar tabs when I couldn't afford it just because like I wanted more people to be out with me and having a good time. And you like that status thing of like, oh, Dustin's taking care of everything tonight, and like, oh, it makes you look a certain way to ladies and all this and blah blah blah. And same thing with Coke. Like like later on, I got greedy about it and would just buy enough for myself and hide it away. And
So
but
quick timeout. Are you at this point in your life or leading up to it, for all intents and purposes, well taken care of, healthy human? You're not trying to drink away some, horrible upbringing or
no,
childhood.
yeah, no, not at all. Because I had a great childhood. Like the only thing anybody could even point at and like therapists have poked around at, like did it bother you with your dad being around? And I'm always like, no, it really didn't. Like I'm not hiding anything. Like we had a great relationship, and obviously you saw the magic that happened there toward the end. So it was really just I loved the party, and it was not self-medicating at that point. And then that continued on. So what is that, 22? That continued on for like 5 years. And, just that way, which to me feels like a blur, like a blur.
You're saying '02 to '07,
Yeah.
2002. Okay.
Yeah. And then, uh, my, at the time, 17-year-old little brother calls me and says, I'm going to be a dad and I'm getting married. And I guess my heart or my brain or whatever was looking for an excuse to get the fuck out of there. And I said, I want to be
Why
part of
did
my
you want
net.
to get out of there?
I think I knew that I was killing myself. I really do. Um, and I stupidly thought, oh, all I got to do is change locations. Problem solved. It got much worse in San Angelo. Um, so I just decided, hey, I'm going to train up a new manager of this business, and I'll be able to move about the time my nephew will be, I think, 2 months old. I want to be a part of his life. I don't want to be the mysterious uncle. And uh, I of course said that because that made me sound a certain way, and that was a part of the answer. But really, I was running away. And so I moved back to San Angelo, and again, I had the best of intentions. I was like, I need to get a job where uh, I'm not going to be around people that do this. So like restaurants are out. I cannot work in a restaurant because they're just full of, you know, and I was like, I'm a good salesman. It's like, I'm going to go work in this furniture store, sell furniture. The whole staff, the salesman, the warehouse, they were all on coke. It's like, oh my God. And so like it just got like worse and I got to rekindle things, with my dad and get tight with my brother again. And it was around my nephew when I was of good mind. And then of course running into people that were still around and lots of reunions and rekindling friendships. And it felt so good for a while. But then once that wears off, I just realized that, oh, I'm just back what I just left. It's the same. And um, something that had happened while I was gone, that my father's mental health had gone. Um, Manic depression was pretty much agoraphobic. Getting them to leave the house was next to impossible. He used to drive across town to bring his mail in because he didn't want to go outside. And I had complete, profound ignorance to all mental health issues at that point in my life. I can't overstate that enough. Complete, profound ignorance. It's embarrassing to think about now, but you know, there was a lot of just get up, man up kind of talk. Um, and oh man, I can't imagine what that felt like for him to hear that. And when I moved back, it was to move in with him. That lasted for 3 weeks, and we were just, and it was horrible. Like we weren't like that. And then I moved back in with my mom, and so you know, he was going through that, and that was such a mind fuck for me. That was more reason to stay in the party. And then I did wind up at a restaurant, and of course, restaurants are just, you know, on the one hand, I think everyone should let their kids work in a restaurant so they understand what work it is. On the other hand, tell them to be careful. But
Yeah.
um, so uh, even then, I was always a good employee, but I was taking chances, and I think a high functioning addict, what I now know from my lived experience, a high functioning addict is one incident away from being tipped over to no longer high functioning.
What's an example of that?
Your
You
father
drop your
dying,
car into a lake.
or your father dying. Um, so
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So you're
yeah,
saying yes. So you're saying you're functioning and you're one reason for going all the way in away. Not your
yeah,
one.
yeah,
You're not your. Yeah, I
yeah,
got you.
yeah. One more thing happening, but I had at that point, you know, because he died in 2008. I had 6 years of partying at this level with no issue. I thought no issue. There was obviously stuff inside I
Sure.
wasn't dealing with. So like, why would you think like you're in danger at all? Like that's the hard, part of that. And that's why it's so hard to convince an addict or an alcoholic that they are in fact an addict or an alcoholic. Well, what evidence do you have?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fair, it's a fair point sometimes, but, so, uh, that all happened real fast. Uh, early, excuse me, in late 2008, um, my father went into the hospital with pneumonia, and uh, the crazy thing, and this is gonna make me sound nuts to some people, but like the hardest cry I ever had about the whole thing was when he went in the hospital for pneumonia, and my mom kept saying it's just pneumonia, and I just kept saying, no, it's not. I know it's something more. I know it's something more, and I'm real scared, and I was bawling to her. And 2 days later, they came back with a bunch of tests, and they said, you have cancer. It's in your lungs. It's in stage 4. And um, oh my God. And he handled it like a champ, and he was so strong. And I was came and saw him every day, and we had great talks. But like when I wasn't there, I was sure leaning into my two best friends, into the booze and into the coke to deal with it. Now I'm self medicating because I had no fucking idea, because this man that I viewed as my best friend he was on his way out. And but he was the one calm person. And like I remember him saying to my grandparents and to me, like, hey, I don't know what's going on the other side, but I just know I'm always going to be around. So don't be sad. I'm not going anywhere. And I think about that. God, what a comforting thing to say to your family in that moment. That's why I think he was so brave. And then he was real scared of chemo, but he was going to San Antonio to do the chemo. And my uncle that lives down there stepped up and got him and my grandparents an apartment close by to the hospital. And he called me one night and was feeling, so grateful, for his family. And he was going to start chemo the next morning. And he never made it to the hospital. He died of a heart attack that night. And I worked overnight at a hotel at that time. Actually, that was right, in between jobs or whatever. But uh, he was 44 too, which my parents were young when I was born, and so that's why this past birthday when I turned 45, that fucked me up a little bit because made it longer than he did, and so I remember I talking, and I was already real in addiction, and one of the last visits to the hospital, and I said, I need you to stick around. I'm going to do big things. And he said, I know you are. And uh, it's funny you forget, like, I had no time or capacity as how fucked up I was to be sad about that. And that's the thing about getting sober is you're going to, hey, this stuff's been sitting over here waiting for you, and you're going to deal with it right fucking now. And so that's later on, that's what happened. And so, I, um, taught me one lesson on the way out. I was over at his house because he's like, I said, okay, I'll go to San Antonio. He said, but I need one thing, and I'm not asking, I'm telling. He said, I want to spend the weekend at home, not in the hospital with my son before I go to San Antonio. I'm not asking. And they were just, okay. And we spent that weekend together. And I was doing something on the computer. And he said, hey, son, can you get up and grab me a bottle of water? And I said, hold on, let me just finish this real quick. And he said, yeah, take your time. It's not going to have cancer or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, all right. But it's just like to be in the face of death and to have that kind of humor is just like a profound like awareness that like how precious like time is. And I think about that all the time. Even in that moment, he's just like, let me slide you another lesson. But uh I was already real tight with my grandparents over the years after that made me really, really much more connected to them. But then right after that, so that's November of 2008. Um, excuse me, November of 2000, excuse me, timeline, go back, 2001 to 2026. That's when I moved back. November of 2026 is when he died. Okay. So yeah, I was like 1 year off at the time. Um, and so November of 2026, all of 2027. Oh my God. I can't believe I held on to my job.
You're saying 2006 or 2020?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. 2006. Sorry. Sorry.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
No, no worries.
Yeah. And so, um, so all of 2007 just gone. Like, couldn't think I could be more addicted. Well, in 2000, April of 2008, my grandfather wakes me up. Thank God it was him. And he said, "You got to get up, kid. Matthew's gone." And talk about not accepting reality in a moment. I have an uncle, Matthew, and I have a brother, Matthew. And my uncle is a raging alcoholic, not with us anymore. I said, "My uncle?" He said, "No, little Matthew." And I was like, "Okay, what? My 20-year-old brother is dead? What?" And he died partying. Um, and his body just, he didn't do it on purpose because he had friends with him. So, they did all of it. Like he put the wrong mixture of substances in him and his body just didn't like it on that particular night. And, it could be ruled an accidental overdose. It could just be ruled, as a substance related death. It doesn't matter. It's gone. But, uh, I sure partied with him a lot. I sure did various substances with him. And so like then it's like, okay, now you're really going to be tested. And I so battling that guilt, oh, I'm not going to deal with that. And so then the addiction spiraled hardcore.
And is this just cocaine and beer at the time, or what do you like? What's your day looking like?
Uh yeah, I mean beer and shots and cocaine, but now the new thing is like, well, I've got to get high. And if my connect tells me like, hey, it's dry right now, we can't get any coke. Hey, I know somebody with some meth though. Sure, fine, fuck it, whatever. I'm so lucky that I only did that like 3 times and it didn't get its hooks in me because they were
Yeah.
spaced out enough. If
Mhm.
I had done it like 2 times in a 1 week period, I don't know that I'd be here talking to you about all this. And
And is
San
this kind?
Angelo, that's the meth
Yeah,
is crazy.
yeah. Is this? I'm not staying sober at all. I'm going from one high to the next, or just every night after work.
I feel like I purposely gave myself one recovery day a week. And what that usually looked like was sleeping for like 16 hours.
Hmm.
Just so that I could be ready because I was working at a restaurant, working at Outback Steakhouse in San Angelo. And you get off work and I had to have that so that I could, the Coke so that I could drink as much as I wanted to. Because that's something else that's, you know, it's so weird because it comes from this good place of like togetherness, but like one of the most dangerous parts of like drinking is like the shot culture, especially for the old the older folks, like they can't handle it anymore. But I get it though. It's just nice. So your bros, or your friends, or something like, hey, yeah, and it's
Yeah. So
but
yeah, cheers and everything.
yeah, yeah. So that's uh, and along the lines, just because this will feed into the final straw that broke the camel's back. But over those years in San Marcos, I caught two arrests for DWIs and a couple of public intoxications. The second DWI got dropped to reckless driving, which ended up being profoundly important because so I stayed in that level of addiction, and then um, we get to 2010, and in beginning of May of 2010, I got pulled over. Talk about some bad luck or the best luck ever. Where the penny is, where there used to be all the steel penny. My mom lives on Oxford, half block away. I got pulled over from there to there, from there to there, and for the third one. And If that other one had got up to reckless driving, 3 DWIs in Texas is prison. So that's why that second lawyer did me a big favor. And um, so I got arrested, and over the years, as I fell into addiction and I lived with my mom, I have the sweetest, most wonderful, kindest mother in the world. She does not raise her voice. She leads with kindness always, even when it's tough. And she's so encouraging. And the container she always delivered this message is, listen, don't you always wanted to move to New York and be an actor? Don't you think if maybe you just slow down with the drinking, you could, save some money and maybe you could go give it a shot? Hundreds of times she tried that over the years. That morning after that DWI, no, excuse me, no, sorry. Uh, so that was the beginning of May. She was just real mad, wouldn't want to talk to me. And I kind of chilled out for a little bit because I'm like, hey, I may be really fucked here. And um, then I, I went to a friend reunion, college friend reunion down here in San Marcos that I organized. And I didn't drink very much because I was so like grateful to be with all my favorite people in the world and some of them I hadn't seen in 5 years. And it was just like it was in a dream state. Then I got back to San Angelo, and then I had a couple like benders and just really fucked up. And then I went out for the 31st of May was Memorial Day, and I got day drunk out on the lake and came home, disrespected my mother's house. And on June 1st, 2010, she woke me up morning at 7 a.m. Different approach this time. She was this close to my face, the top of her lungs. You are never going to get to New York, and your dream is a fucking joke. Slammed the door and walked out. I had the day off, and I had to sit with that thought. I got up, I cried, felt sorry for myself, and um, got up and I looked in the mirror, and I could like it's a scene from a movie or something, but out loud, I looked deep in my eyes. It's like, you're a fucking loser, and I hate you. And I had an immediate thought after that scared the shit out of me. I was like, wow, I really meant that. And I was like, that's not okay. And then I was just like so annoyed at the thought of like, I just quit drinking. Should I be sober? And then there was just like so much resentment. Like the conversation I was having, it's not going to fucking change anything. It's not going to do anything. And I already was a fan of journaling at that time. And at some point in the day, I was just like, all right, let's just get out the pros and cons. I've done this several times over the years to refresh the list. I had one pro. I'll probably save some money. That's all I could think of. That's the only thing I could think of on that day. All the cons were like, I'll lose all my friends. Nobody will like me anymore. A bunch of stupid bullshit. But I was just curious enough and desperate enough and hopeless enough to do it. And I had no guidance and didn't know what to do. And I went to a meeting, uh, I think on the second day for 5 minutes. I was like, this ain't my shit. Not at all. There's no fucking way that this is going to help me. And I
It's
walked
just
out.
lame, or you think they're full of it? What's the
Well,
rub?
I just knew sitting in that like sadness and anger and resentment was not going to be my way. And also somebody said something about, and I want to be very clear because over the years people misunderstand and think that I completely shit on AA, and I don't. It's the same thing with religion. If you find peace and comfort and that helps you get and stay sober, I'm proud of you and I'm happy for you. I just had enough awareness to know that that wasn't going to work for me. They sometimes come across as, hey, this is the only way to sobriety. That's why I want to share it with you. That's okay. If you know if it helped you so much that that's what you believe, that's the same thing that happens to people's faith. I get it. It's fine. Comes from a good place. But I just knew right away. But I did sit home pissed for the next 2 weeks, not drinking, obviously not using drugs. And I just wanted to be with my friends. I wanted to be out at the bar and I wanted to be with my friends. Of course, the inner dialogue, well, that's stupid. You can't do that. That's dangerous. And finally, the I'll admit it, ego-driven thought is like, I'm not going to let a place own me like that. I just won't do it. I was like, I want to go see my friends. I'm not going to change my lifestyle. This is not advisable. I've talked many people to sobriety over the years, and I always say, I don't, probably shouldn't do it this way. I'm real lucky it worked out. So I went to the bar 5 nights a week in that first crucial 90 days, 5 nights a week. Not those 2 weeks, the 2 weeks, first 2 weeks I was at home, but the rest of that, 5 nights a week, sat there, friends taking shots. Um, I tried some O'Doul's that taste like shit. I drank water and just didn't stay very long. Go home and have either have a cry or have a fucking rage fit. Probably more the latter. And one thing AA might have right, I think one of the biggest, most important coins they gave you is day 90. And it just so happened that day 90 was what maybe my moment of clarity was like, hey, I'm happier. And that's all I wanted was a chance at happiness. And I think I'm happier. So is this working? Because I didn't want to say like, I refused to say forever in the beginning. I'm going to take a break. 90 days is what I settled on. It's a break. Okay. And then I was like, I'm not going to define it. I'll just keep going. About 10 days later, I wrote my mom a letter. I don't think I could ever read that out loud again or back hard. I know we've written each other lots of letters over the years, but just thanking her, for what she did. All she ever, told me was that she went in the next room and cried, because it hurt her to talk to me like that. And that's why I'm such a big fan of tough love because, man, those are the people that care about you the most. If they're willing to like dig down and do something that might come across in the moment as hurting you because they love you that much, that's your fucking people. That's your inner squad. And if all of us are being honest with ourselves, most of your people ain't doing that. It's only the inner squad that's really gonna like give it to you like that. And that's why I value tough love so much and why my mom is just a treasure to me because you get older and you work things backwards. And it's like, okay, if she wouldn't have done that, I might not have gotten sober. Okay. I might have gone to prison. I might not be alive. But then you start to get certain about things. Oh, I would have never made it to New York. And then I would have made it to New York. I wouldn't have met Kathy. Okay. I wouldn't have met Kathy. I wouldn't have Izzy. See what I mean? It just keeps going and going and going. Like, that's why, like, if it's on your heart to give tough love to somebody, but you don't want, like, you let yourself be stopped because you don't want to hurt their feelings, you might be setting the rest of their life up to have the life of their dreams. So, pardon my language, but fucking say that shit. Risk it all because tough love saved my life. If there's one thing that I was most excited to like share with you and with anybody else who hears this, whether it's two people or 2,000, it doesn't matter. Is that it's the tough love saved my life, and the biggest it's the biggest thing that I know, and um yeah the only thing to really be sad about after that really is that my dad and brother didn't get to see the journey. But guess what? You get to make, much like we talked about with faith, I think you get to make, don't criticize the way people grieve. That's a real bad thing to do. And I'm guilty of it. But everybody grieves in their own way that gives them peace. I mean, there's destructive ways, but like, I often think, because you're the main character in your story, right? And so everything that happens has to like, because you can't have anybody's experience but your own, has to like serve your story in some way. So I don't want to be sad about them. Of course, I get sad about them, and it's never on birthdays or Christmas. Me, it's a random Tuesday, you know. But I love to think about it. It took years of sobriety to come to this, but like I love to think about them because their combined deaths sent me into the depths of addiction to where I had no choice but to get sober. So I came to this thing one time of like thinking of their deaths in a way of sacrificing so that I could live the life of my dreams. That's a hard truth to accept because it makes you like, am I being selfish? But no, it's like I said, the main character in your story. And so, like I referenced that girl in the Ram Dass documentary, their love and their energy, because it doesn't go anywhere, lives in all of this. So they have been part of this romance and love I had with my wife. They've been part of like the magic of watching, Isabel grow up. And I just, so like, but I'm not, I'm an imperfect human. So like, do I cry sometimes because I all of a sudden picture my father holding my daughter and that never got to happen? Of course, of course. But I still know that their love and energy is like part of her. And um, if John, I hope you don't mind this because I know it's not the sole purpose of like why we're talking today, but just since we're in where we're at right now, is anybody that might hear this because it's something I'm just so passionate about. Um, if this resonates with you at all, and you feel like there's a slight chance you got a problem with any substance or alcohol, and you're curious about taking a step, I just a couple of pieces of advice: just let go of forever. Just decide to like make a I want to do this right now. I'm going to commit to something short term, the next month or 90 days or whatever. And don't forget about psychoanalysis and like and all that. Just let that work itself out and just simplify it. If you want a higher chance of success, simplify it, which will shorten the time. And for me, that simplification was choosing love over fear. Is something that I have tattooed on my arm. And it's just love for yourself over fear of change. If you can make yourself start there and not use today, tomorrow, whatever, I think you got a shot. I know that's not the whole purpose of why we're here. I have to say that because it's on my heart to say that.
Yeah, I appreciate you
Whew.
sharing that.
Um, yeah.
You said something earlier about sacrifice, and uh, I was remembering the end of Saving Private Ryan, where those guys actually, they purposefully went to save him, not purposefully went to die. And then, the captain or Tom Hanks says to him to earn it. And I did an episode about salvation, and I remember my dad having these tapes from the early 2000s on Romans, and this being just a constant thing that we battled with in church of like, are you justified through faith, or do you have to do any works, or what's grace look like? And um, I talk about how I had this misunderstanding that if Jesus died for our sins and grace takes care of that, then the more sin you have, the bigger grace you get. And so I kind of created this false logic of grace isn't, it's not that you earn grace, it's that you fuck up enough to get grace. Where I think life, even if you don't see that as you're the star of that story and these were sacrifices for you, I definitely think that's how grace works. I mean, my life went dark after my first marriage, and it had nothing to do with the person. It had it wasn't never going to work anyway. I went against myself to be in that marriage. Um, it was the shame of the rule that I had failed, that people in my family don't get divorced, and I should have been stronger than to be in a marriage that I couldn't sustain. And so when I met my wife, I talk about her as my guru, but she's not actually. It's funny because she doesn't buy into any of this bullshit of like spiritual stuff. She is that. She just doesn't, when I talk about it, or, I make these sage cards or talk about Ramana Maharshi, or who is Ram Dass's guy at Neem Karoli Baba, like any of this weird esoteric people, she kind of scoffs at and thinks it's funny. But she embodies what all of the things we think of as self-sacrificial, loving unconditionally. And she was grace for me. My whole 6 years and all the shit I trampled on was sacrifice. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't people willing to sacrifice. That to me is, I don't know how to say it. It is the people who love unconditionally know that their peace in somebody else's journey isn't for them. If that makes sense. It's not like anybody dies on purpose, but they are, like you're talking about, energy or love that can only be given. It's not something you hold some back for yourself. And I think those people, you talked about your mom. I remember when my mom got cancer, and it was after, my life fell apart, and I felt guilty, like somehow I had caused her to stress enough to bring about her own cancer. And she would never allow me to talk like that or to think that way. But what it makes me feel, and you're talking about trying to help people that might want to be sober now, or might find themselves fucking up their own life because they're afraid. I feel like we are on the other side of the love equation, that we are now into a golden chain to pay forward. We were saved through grace. We fucked up. I mean, you can talk about addictions or desires or currency as relationship. It doesn't matter. Selfishness is selfishness. And, grace pulling you out to be whole again makes you selfless for other people. And so now we're part of the sacrifice part. I know as soon as I met my wife and I felt whole again, I have 4 fucking daughters immediately. And it's just give. And I was baptized by fire. I make the joke that I've had 7 years to have 0 through 21 ages. So I've had all the ages of kids in 7 years compacted in, times 4 kids. I don't know. I think being the star of the story, it becomes a self-sacrificial story. That to me is like, that's the path of the Bodhisattva. That's the path of the incarnate Messiah. It's not about being like a holy figure. It's about surrendering to that flow to where you can be that for other people. It could be your children or a brother or a cousin or somebody who's going through that same shit. Or it could just be one day you love somebody enough and you're not there anymore, and now they know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that on a deep level, and what you shared also made me think of a guy, Alan Watts, because I discovered him actually during the first 6 months of sobriety. It was mentioned when I was in college, but of course, being on a sobriety journey and hearing, and this is one of his more well-known quotes, but your lowest point is often the doorway to your highest self. I was like, what? And like that is kind of like the beginnings of like what you're talking about. And I think it's that grace that is pulling you up, to that highest point. And it's just, but it's and I think, if could sit and talk with him, if that would be awesome. But to expand on that, it's just the only dangerous way of saying that is your highest self, because you don't want your ego to attach to that phrasing and go, oh, highest self. And it's kind of what you're talking about, just like instead of your highest self or being this enlightened being, like now you're this sacrifice or being like of service. And which is what that immediately made me think of, because I've had several conversations, because what I do and the decision I made, you go on a journey. I had 2 years of ego-driven preaching about my sobriety, and I made suggestions and recommendations to people. And I had to come to it one day and like, you fucking idiot. Like, this is your journey. It's about your relationship to substance and booze, not anybody else's. Okay, what's the solution? Make it known, make myself available, sit back. And that's what I've always done since. And then the thing that you just made me think of is that one of the first things I always say is to say, hey, I would say this year, the thing I did earlier, like I did this in an unorthodox way. So I don't want you to like, I'm going to share what I did, but like, I'm not suggesting it. And the whole thing is you find your way. That's, what I want to help. And I was like, and the other first thing I say is, um, I'm not special. And I just don't want you to think like I have like the inner strength of like some Buddhist monk or something. It is just choices that you're perfectly capable of. I'm no stronger than you. Um, and that's a very, if there's one thing, because I've had that talk maybe a dozen times with people approaching me over these years, that's always the point I have made every single time. Because it's not like, because I'm also not serving myself if I start to be like, well, you just gotta dig down. Like, no, that's not going to help me. Not going to help them. And it's just, yeah,
Yeah,
it's, yeah, I was just gonna say that really what you shared just there, really made me think of that.
I think that's a common misunderstanding of these sages or enlightened beings, that they have something that we don't, or that there's something that is available to them that's not available to the rest of us. And um, if I did have anybody that watched any of these videos, they would disagree and hate me for this next comment. But one of my kind of guru stage guys was David Goggins, and right before I met my wife, I read David Goggins' book "Can't Hurt Me." I don't know if you're familiar with him. Um, People love to hate him now because he's so brutally transparent with his thoughts and feelings. And I think that offends people's egos, especially in this world right now, where um, we are very aware of the way we speak to other people, which is good. It's important. We should speak kindly and be aware of our words, but we've also become very sensitive to other people's words. And I think when somebody comes along, and you talk about tough love, when somebody comes along and says, "Hey, that's not healthy, what you're doing," people think they're attacking me as a person. Anyway, I'm not going to defend him. Let him do his thing. My point is for me, he gave me the strength or courage to suffer enough to break through my own fear. And I feel like, oh, that's what I was going to say. He always says, don't make me to be somebody special, because then that keeps you from being able to do anything. I'm not going to allow you to say I can do stuff that other bullshit. I was fat, out of shape, lazy, anything you can think of as a derogatory way of being. I was all that. So I'm also that. What I think these great people do is they do the little thing that's right in front of them right now. And there's a guy, Thomas Campbell, who talks about decision space. And you're only given the space that you can handle, and then when you can handle it, you're given more decision space. And I think the masters, the disciplined, the spiritual enlightened, they handle the decisions that they can, and they don't try to do everything else. They let God, spirit, life work through them the rest. They just don't avoid the shit we avoid, washing the dishes or cleaning the room. And then they don't try to control everything else. I think that's, they're open to be moved and led. Um, and I think that's the opposite of the desire filled person or the addict. Is you're so afraid of doing the simple thing, and you're looking at all the stuff that you've got to try to control. So you're afraid of all of this big time shit and you just won't handle the one thing that's in front of you. And yeah, I think my advice to anybody is, which I don't have that level of coming from here to here, but what I've learned in being with my wife, who I call the doer, um, is you just take care of the little shit right in front of you, and you let God take care of the big shit. I think Ramana Maharshi says, when you get on the train, you don't carry your luggage on your head anymore. You set it down, let the train carry it. Yeah, and that's my ramble fest. So
No, I like that. I like that train analogy. Yeah, yeah, that's how you said that, dealing with the thing in front of you. I mean, that's all about the just the be here now. Like like, and I don't know where I picked this one up, but like, another one of my simple favorites is like, hey, yesterday's an illusion and tomorrow's not here yet. So all you do have is right now. So like, why are you going to create, you know, depression by dwelling on that thing that's now an illusion, or why are you going to create anxiety by dwelling on this thing that's not here yet? Just or as my grandfather used to say, don't worry about things twice. Um,
good
which
advice.
is, yeah, this is great advice. But yeah, I like that. I like the train analogy, not putting it on the but that's one of those easier said than done things for sure, though. Like, because we certainly, as a species, love to make things harder on ourselves than we need to. Um,
Yeah. Well,
but
yeah. Sorry, I speaking of the train derailed the conversation. So
oh no,
please
no,
pick up.
yeah. So I got once I got past those, 11 timing allows like lines up, but just about the time that I left that ego, preachy part of the sobriety journey behind and got to more where I am now, was about the time that all the court proceedings, because they delay and delay and delay, and I, much to my lawyer's resistance, when it finally got here, he's just like, "Well, I will do this, and you'll get probation or this." I'm like, "No, no, no, no." I was like, "I am, I have money ready, and I am. You understand? The second this is over, I'm moving to New York because I was just, I had, I'd been ready. I was fired up." And he's like, "Well, your only shot is like, let's plead guilty and ask for house arrest." I'm like, "Okay, let's do that." He say, "I can't do that." I say, "Hey, I'm sorry, but I don't care about like if there's an ego thing about you losing or not looking a
Right.
certain way. Yeah, I got a big dream here and I'm getting out of here." He said, "Okay, I can get you 40 days." I was like, 40 days? That's nothing. I was like, "Yeah, when can we do that?" He's like, "All right, well, I just won't allow any more delays." And he said, "We'll get it done." And man, I was the happiest person to receive house arrest in the history of the universe. And I was like, put that fucking wristband on me, let's go. And then like, um, it's not as bad. You still get to go to work, and like I went to work. I even got an excuse to like I officiated a good friend's wedding, and I got permission from the judge to leave to just do that. So I had to like pull my suit down just enough to cover up the the wristband, so I didn't that didn't look weird. And then I was gone 2 weeks after it was over, and um, moved to New York, and uh, I got a quick start. I found. Do you ever have like a part of a conversation that you had with somebody like years ago just come in your brain like a bolt of lightning?
I would say I've had those conversations or pieces of conversations come into my brain at the point when I needed to hear it. I don't know if it's ever been felt as a powerful surge, but it certainly has been out of nowhere into the right context.
Yeah, that's more what I meant. I just using
Yeah,
colorful language. But I was sitting
you're
there
more of a
thinking,
poet than I am.
I was sitting there thinking like, well, I live here. What do I do now? And then I'm going to do a little name dropping and honoring of a kind of sort of well-known person from San Angelo, but I I was like, okay, do I know somebody? And then I called my cousin Ryan. I was like, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you give me Mark Menchaca's number? Do you think that he would like just go have lunch with me and let me pick his brain? And you know him, right? Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I
So
know of him.
yeah,
His
he's
dad was my
real
driver's ed coach.
down to earth, nice guy. And he said, of course. And he met with me, and we met by Union Square, and and he just said something real simple. He's like, hey, um, he said, it's not like you may need to sharpen the tools. Find a teacher, like so you can find like a community of actors, and that's how you're going to be your base for like making connections and branching out, and work on this indie film and that and that, and that's just you'll start your community that way because you're starting your community from the ground up. And I was like, okay, cool. Sound like practical advice. And like this was a guy that was, it looked like he was about to, take off and had done some things. And I was like, all right, great. And then I went home. I'm like, okay, but like, I don't know anything about any teachers in New York. And then the conversation that I'd had with a friend like from 5 years before, and she was in New Orleans and had a teacher from New York come and give a workshop. And she had said, if you ever get to New York, look up this teacher, Dina Levy. I was like, and then like I'm sitting there, I just out loud with my buddy, I was like, Dina Levy. He was like, what? I was like, just before that escapes my mind, like, let's get the computer out. And we Googled her. I called her immediately. And she said, how'd you hear about me? I told her, she said, wow, this is an incredible story. And she's like, I have a workshop coming up next weekend and we have 2 spots available. And I was like, to my buddy Garrett, I was like, hey, you went in on this? And I was like, your last 2 spots are filled. We want it. And so she was a wonderful teacher and just helped me. Her whole thing is what works about you. And I give her so much credit in resharpening the tools and giving me the confidence to go out and get the quick professional start and all the acting gigs that I did. But the most important thing is that at the end of the year, you do this showcase in front of all these managers and agents and whatever. And it's a really big deal who they pick as your partner. And she picked this girl, my friend Salma. And uh, my friend Salma introduced me to a girl from another night's class. That girl was my wife. And um, talk about another sense memory thing. I don't even know why I did this because I'm not a handshaker, but nice to meet you and stuck out my hand. She's like, I don't do that. And she just hugged me and she's like the world champion hugger. And I was just immediately uh, like all charm, game, whatever you want to call it, gone. I don't know what to say. And
Disarming.
yeah, yeah, totally. Just totally. And uh I'll say I'm gonna hard thing for the fragile male ego to say out loud to people, but I would say I had below average confidence over the years in the approaching of women. Um and who knows where that starts? I mean, and when I was young, I was a fat kid, and when I was in high school, I felt I was only in theater and on the outskirts of being cool, and then I don't know. In college, I guess all that just carried over, and throughout the years, just not that confident. Not that I didn't date. It's just that I felt I had to always have like this really strong sign from a girl, and sometimes with her saying something along the lines that she's into me before I made a move. That did not happen this time. I was a level of like confident and like assertive that I had never been, where I was surprising myself. But she was the first girl I allowed myself to really go after and date in sobriety. So it's been, a little over about 3 years at that point because I was a year in, and um, you know, almost kind of demanded her number after hanging out with her a few times. And it was just one of those situations where the one thing we have in common is we absolutely despise small talk. I can't stand it. I feel so uncomfortable and cringy. I'll leave a situation if it's happening. Don't ask me about the weather. Shut up. Um, And so we just went in and talked about absolutely everything on our first date. And um, I tell this story all the time, but like we at the beginning of the date, we went and walked around Prospect Park, which is like the Central Park of Brooklyn, and we made a bad New York mistake. We both left the house with no umbrella. We got to the deepest part, most inner part of the park. The skies opened up. We just both had this awareness, like we can't outrun this. There's no need. And so we just literally walked in the rain, just talking and digging into each other and bouncing from tree to tree to get a little bit of cover. And she had said something about like, oh, maybe it's, we'll get it paid off with a rainbow or something, later on. And we giggled about that. And then we got around the park and the light switch, the rain stopped, the sun came out, and this double rainbow shot up over this building that's in Prospect Park. And we just like locked eyes. And like I now know, like you don't know in the moment, but I now know like that was first date and I was falling in love with her right there. And we both like snapped a picture of it and threw it on the gram. But that picture became so profoundly important that I'm so lucky to have a cousin who is a wildly talented painter, and my cousin Ryan. I sent him that picture. I had him paint it. It was a wedding gift. But anyway, so I knew very early on that I'm pretty sure this is my person, but I don't, how do you know that? I've never had that thought. I'm always been one of these people who said I'll probably never get married because I have things I want to do, blah, blah, blah. And, um, so I'd been together like, a good while, and I came home to visit. And, like I said, was just crazy close to my grandparents, even more so after my dad passed away. And I showed them, I told them about her, and then I showed them her picture, and there was deep breaths and pauses from both of them. My wife is Caribbean, so she's black, and uh, I
Did you
didn't need to
say
say where.
Peruvian?
Close. I said Caribbean, but
Oh,
she's
Caribbean.
from Curacao, which is right next to Aruba. They're all part of the Netherlands Antilles.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and but she had been in New York so long, but so, and I had a
This
feeling
is
that there
your
was a
West Texas grandparents.
yes, yes, yeah, who were like once I pulled this apart and unpacked and examined it, I'm like, in the Loving versus Virginia case, which is what finally made interracial marriage federally legal, that was 1967, and they were full grown ass adults with three kids when that happened. So you think about stuff like that, and you understand and everything. But they did the famous line of we're not prejudiced, but we should believe you should stick with your own, and wouldn't you be more comfortable with a white woman? My grandmother said that, and uh, it was one of those moments I was just like, don't speak, don't speak, don't speak. And I just was silent, and I said, and I just in my voice, I'm like, you have to set this boundary now or never. And it's just, they told me so many times how much they admired that I'd always treat them with love and respect. And I said, I'm going to continue to do that. And that's what I'm doing. Here I go. And I said, okay, um, there's no way to know this for sure, but I have a strong feeling this might end up being the woman I spend the rest of my life with. Um, y'all have always been like a model for what I want, like a loving relationship to look like. And the ways I see y'all with each other is some of the ways I feel about her. And it's like reassuring that she might be the person. And I'm going to be bringing her in town next time I'm here. And because of how much I deeply love her, I would never take her any place where I felt she might be uncomfortable. And based on what you just said, I'm a little worried that she might be uncomfortable. So I'm going to go ahead and go right now. I'm still going to come over tomorrow for lunch and scrabble, but I need y'all to sit with each other and talk about this some more and talk about how you would like, to proceed going forward. And I really don't want you. And they started to open. I said, please don't talk now because I think you just need to talk to each other. And I went home, oh, soul crushing. I was
Mhm.
bawled my eyes out. And I went there and she's like, I guess it was kind of, grandparents. She's like, what's that thing they have on your phone, the face phone thing? I'm like, you mean FaceTime? And she's like, yeah, that. Can we do that with her? Yeah. You want to do it right now? And we did it. And she talked to them and we just ate and then we played Scrabble. She kept just saying stuff like surface level stuff. Oh, she's real nice. She seems real smart. I love her laugh, that kind of thing. And I went to leave. I got a hug. Then I started to turn, and then I got my arm grabbed. And my grandmother said, "Thank you for doing that, because now I can, excuse me, now I can see her through your eyes." And and I was like, "Okay, now I feel comfortable bringing her." And so I brought her next time. And just long story short, it's inevitable. Everyone will fall in love with my wife. Like one of my favorite quotes, uh, of all time is as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. And my wife personifies that quote. And needless to say, they just fell for her so hard after meeting her. And it just continued on. And she's like a tech expert, and like they were struggling with this thing, and she fixed something there. And then like, my grandfather, oh, you just changed our life, and all this, and just loved her so much. And um and I would have done it anyway, but it sure helped that I had that, because for me to make the decision, because it wasn't long after that I was like, I need to marry her. I want to ask her. And at that point we had not even been together a year. And uh a few months down the road, I asked her. We had a long engagement. We were together a year and 3 months before I proposed to her. We had a long engagement, and their relationship continued on beautifully. And some things sometimes don't need to be said. They never apologized for anything they said that day, and I absolutely did not need them to, because people can apologize with their actions and with their being and with the way they show up. And they did that in spades. And we need to all remember that and allow people to do that, because some people just, they can't get out the words. And especially our, our elders, I think, is we're all guilty of that. But anyway, um, my grandmother's health started going down, and quickly. And we got married in Curacao. Um, and I knew they wouldn't be able to travel. It hurt, but nothing's going to be perfect. And my uncles and my aunts stepped up, and they said, "Hey, let's just have a second reception. We'll do it here at the Cactus in San Angelo." And and even though it was going to be in San Angelo, up until 2 weeks before that, I thought there was a chance she wasn't going to be able to make it, because she was in and out of the hospital. Health was real bad. And but actually, my other grandmother too, her health was real bad. I thought both weren't going to be able to make it, but they were both there, so they got to see our little reception. Uh, and that was in July. The grandmother I'm mainly referencing was gone the next January. The other one was gone in March. They didn't even see our first year anniversary, but they stuck around long enough to see that. And we came in town 2 weeks for Christmas before she passed away, and she was in ICU. And we're waiting to see her. And that whole conversation is just swirling around in my head. And I'm thinking about, the whole thing. And I said, again, this goes back to the, whatever it is. I know makes me sound crazy to some folks. I don't care. But like there's the same thing with my father, when I knew when the pneumonia, I just knew I was saying goodbye. I could tell. I just knew it. So I went first. And, and then, and Kathy stepped in there, and she just kept telling her she loved her over and over, holding her hand. And the nurse came. Oh, nurse came in. She said, "This is Kathy, my granddaughter." I fucking ran into the hallway. I couldn't do it anymore. I wish I could have soaked up a little bit more of that beauty of that moment because from there to there is crazy, man. That's crazy. And uh, I told you this whenever we first talked, but for that reason and many others, my daughter carries my grandmother's name. My grandmother was named Jacqueline, and my daughter's name is Isabel Jacqueline. And because again, don't ever tell me people are set in their ways. I have proof otherwise, and I just won't listen to that. And it's people are like, I don't want to say a victim of their times, but like you're you're given you're given a shaped lens, and there's a lot of factors that affect it, and the time that you were born, affects that. When me and you are, you know, 75 instead of 45, we're gonna have our kids getting on to us for something that we've refused to move on the times with. And it's
Mhm.
just the way it goes on, and that'll never stop. But like that's to be cheesy about it, the power of like love and seeing, you know, and it's crazy that that's still a thing that people still see different or, like, but there's still people that like that would be disappointed if their, white son or daughter brought home somebody that looked different. And I don't know what the solution to that is. I don't. I
I
just have
think,
my lived experience.
yeah, and I think your lived experience is the key. Is in your dad's situation with your play and the experience where your grandparents got to meet your girlfriend at the time, wife now, is they had an experience that transcended a concept. And I think that's the problem out here. We're out in the desert. We have our way of being. We don't have a lot of trade routes with new ideas coming through um, San Angelo. And the people who have been here have probably always been here, or at least their life, and not necessarily generations. But I think when you meet someone who's gay, when you meet someone who's black, and they used to be other, and now they're somebody and you have an experience with, and this person has the same fears and dreams and normal shit they have to do during their day as I do. All of those kind of conceptual boundaries, divisions that we made up, that we learned, just fall away because I have this experience right here with this person. And they're not what that was. They're not what we said that was. But you have to experience it. And you allowed your grandparents an experience. Here's a beautiful black woman who's loving and strong, and their concept of that was blown away and shattered.
Yeah. You know what scares me about what you just said? It's so accurate what you said, but you know where those experiences cannot happen? In the motherfucking Facebook comment section. That's what scares me about our times. It's like I
Yeah.
feel like people have either regressed or like have halted any sort of like growth in that regard because they have eliminated those experiences because everything is that way. That's why like me and my wife have a rule and we don't always stick to it, but like if we're texting about something and then we're like the disagreement starts and it starts to turn serious, usually we can be like, hey, we need to continue this in person.
Mhm.
Um, just because there's not a person alive that is capable of never misreading tone when
Sure.
something is typed out. And it's yeah. So I love that you said that the experiences and people. I just would wish for everybody to set up their lives to have the opportunities to have as many of those experiences as possible. And I think they can largely only happen in person. Um,
Yeah, I know. The social media has created a new social structure that we don't understand, and um, we are at its leading. We're not controlling it. We just put ourselves into social media and get pushed around because we don't know how to be in that realm. And you're right. A lot of us are hooked in there because of the cool things to find out or see, and then we forget to just share our experiences outside of
Yeah.
that world.
Yeah. It's yeah, that's one of the reasons to bring it to the now. And I'm so happy for the circle of coming back here because we're in New York. We got sick in New York, and well, I mean, I got fulfilled real quick. It's weird about like artistic dreams because people assume that you want to be on talk shows and on magazines and be famous. That was never my thing. I just wanted to be in New York and to act. And I got real lucky, got a fast start. I mean, I was on TV like I think 7 times and did a couple of like shows at off-Broadway theaters and totally fulfilled. Mission accomplished. And also the bonus, I got a wife. And then when you're doing that though, you jump from side job to side job. And I fell in love with one of the side jobs, which is a hotel job. And they said, "Hey, we're opening up a new hotel in Seattle. You want to be a manager and move over there?" And my wife said yes, sight unseen. And then we went off to Seattle. The where that part is important is we had been trying to conceive for since we got married unsuccessfully, had a miscarriage, those are so much more common than people realize. People just don't talk about them. But that was real hard. And but living in New York, when you're doing the rat race and the grind, it is stressful. And I think that was a big part of like why we were unsuccessful in conceiving. And then we moved to this really chill place and we're relaxed. And this is a pretty common story from what I understand, though, also. But after 5 years and IVF and miscarriage and all this, we ended up having like a 2 hour tear filled conversation. We're like, hey, we've done our best. IVF didn't work this last time. We're not going to do it this time. Let's just be done trying. We have no reason to be careful, in the normal way because that hasn't worked anyway, so it doesn't matter. But let's just be done trying and move on, and let's just do us. And she was pregnant 2 weeks later.
Hmm.
And I think I will never think anything else. Yes, moving to a less environment, but also for anybody that might be listening that's trying to do that and struggling, I understand that there's the apps like, oh, you're the golden day when you're menstruating. In my opinion, take the agenda out of the bedroom and just love each other because that's what creates a child. I know that's what did it that day. And um, then, I got romanticized by being up there. The Pacific Northwest is beautiful. And every time we visited, of course, tears at the airport. And then my wife, to her credit, one time when we were coming from Thanksgiving, all right at the airport, she said, "Wasn't the plan eventually to move back down here?" And I'd completely forgotten about it. And then as soon as we spoke that into the universe, somebody said, told her that her job could be remote. And then that was the catalyst. I was like, oh, okay, all I got to do is find a job down here. And from thought to moving was 9 months. From that crying at the thing, it's just boom, and it happened. And we've been back for 2.5 years, and there's just continuous signs of being right where I'm supposed to be at the right perfect time. Um, so two people that have not been mentioned on this, but are of the utmost importance is my two nephews. They were part of that conversation whenever we said, let's be done trying like we have our nephews and we love them like they're our own children. And, they'll be enough. And they were just little kids when I moved to New York, you know, little kids. And I cried so much over them because I'm like, I'm just going to be uncle who lives in New York. They're not going to know me very much. And I have a profoundly close relationship with both of them, and I'm so grateful for that. And both of them, even though they're like 20 and 19, they don't like to party at all. And I like to think I have a little bit of a influence on that. Uh, and they're the best part of their dad. And so being close to them, we have made up for so much lost time. And and it was hard while we were away, but past doesn't exist. And we're here now. We're around everybody, and I'm grateful for I try to say this all the time, like everything good or bad in your life prepares you for something else. You got to be grateful for all of it. And we talked how I reframed my death of my dad and my brother as sacrifice. And I try to do stuff like that even on a small scale. I'm just I mean, it's impossible when you're going through it, right? Like we all just get angry or frustrated whenever we're going through the thing, but like in the not too distant future, it, the reason that that's going to serve you your life is going to reveal itself. And yeah, um, that's as far as profound events and the Cliff's notes of journey. That's pretty much brings us to the here and now, as we say, and yeah, I really really just thank you for listening to it all, man.
Yeah, and I told you I hadn't heard your story, and I don't know who will, but
Yeah,
um,
even if it's just you, like
that's
that's
what I
that's
said. Yeah, I
that's
just want
fine.
to hear it. That's what this is for. I want to
Yeah,
have this podcast where I get to talk to people that I want to, that I can enjoy a conversation with, and this has been that, and um, it's nice to see other people that are kind of at the same state or stage in life having similar fruit from living a life that is not just sitting around consuming whatever that may be. And we both were lucky with the women or partners that we have. And like you said, the children are the fruit of that love. And I think that's how I view our kids. um, and yeah, I really appreciate you being willing to share. I think so. A lot of the stuff I do on this podcast is just bullshit AI to help me just get stuff out there because it can be more
yeah,
efficient. I don't do this full time. I don't know how to do a microphone or a video yet. And this is the authentic part. There's a real human sharing their story. But one of the things um, that kind of help self processes is holding the question. And I think you're at the point in your story where everything worked out, but you would have never known that in 2006, 2007. And
yeah,
I think you there's an unfolding that happens in life, and it's gonna fucking happen no matter what you do. You can fight it, you can try to hang on to it, and you can make it miserable, or you can just accept that it's a mystery and that it'll unfold at its own time. And like you said, your granddad said, don't worry about the same thing twice. I mean, let your life flow out of wherever it is. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say other than thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing and being vulnerable and open and breaking the West Texas man stereotype. Maybe more people will be willing to do some things
yeah,
that are
yeah. It's
countercultural.
I tried the dip in the Copenhagen. It was gross. No, but no, yeah. I just it goes back to the we're all just walking each other home thing. I think um I hope that I can speak for the both of us and say I think the best thing that I could do for myself and for you today is share, and the best thing that you could do for me and for yourself today is just to create that space where we're able to do that because you know um we all just have an infinite amount of lessons and wisdom inside of us, and it's like the what does this say? The teacher shows up and the student's ready, and I think that applies to every single one of us. There's just like we're surrounded by teachers, and just got to be open to it. And for right now, like I said, most profound teacher I have is my 4-year-old daughter.
Wait till she's a teenager, then you'll really learn a lot of lessons.
I've had some friends with teenagers say like, wait till the first time that your daughter is arguing with you and you realize that she's right. It's gonna sting. It's like, all right, well, we're not there yet because she's arguing
That's right.
about
That's right. No rush. Stay where you are.
yeah, but yeah, man,
Yeah,
it's oh, and this is a nice break from the also the reality of news events and everything in the
absolutely.
world because
Yeah,
this is what we can control and have influence over. And
you
um
bet.
so yeah, it's a good day, man, and you have been the cause for that, so I appreciate you.
Well, just happy to be here, as my late favorite songwriter says. Well, Dustin, good luck to you. Is I know you're on social media, but if somebody wants to contact you as far as the addiction subject goes, or maybe what something they
I
should
will
do.
I put myself out there for because I'll make posts and stuff, and I mean this when I say like it doesn't have to. If I know you, of course, but if it's somebody that you love that would prefer to talk to somebody that they don't already know, because I get that part of it, I'm willing to talk to them too. Anybody.